I'm Chantal.
And I'm Nikki, and we're the faces behind Agile Caribbean Life.
So today we're joined by a special guest and colleague of ours, Miss Kimon Rose. And she is going to have a conversation with us today about mental health. So Kimon, why don't you start off by sharing a part of your mental health journey? Why are you such an advocate for mental health?
All right, so let me say exactly where to start because this goes far now. Let me start in 2015 when I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. So I was in the second year of university, and if anybody know, it gets intense, especially around exam time. So I was there getting ready for school, makeup, standing in front of the mirror and everything, as I usually do. Get nice up for school. And out of nowhere, like this confusion, like a heavy wave of confusion rushed over me. The racing thoughts, intrusive thoughts, the like textbook anxiety attack. And I wasn't surprised, but in the moment of panic, I just wanted to know I wasn't going to die because that's what it feels like. But because I understood what was happening again, I was studying psychology at the time, random courses here and there because I've always loved the psychology. So I was able to pick up on what was happening and asked a friend of mine to bring me to the counseling unit. So after that first session and few more, I was diagnosed, probably about 4 or 5 sessions, I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. But like I said, my story did not start there. All of that was really compounded by, like, I had experienced a very traumatic event 5 years prior, and I was repressing like the entire 5 years. It happened while I was in high school, and I just felt like being an A student and having these high expectations, I just had to do well. So it got to the point where I was repressing what I was experiencing, and I was able to get my 7 1s and my 2 in 1, 2, and 3 in math. No shame.
It's a pass, girl.
I was able to do well nonetheless, but I want to highlight here that I don't encourage repressing. Because that 5 years of repressing turned into something that's still affecting me. And I feel like when I went through what I went through, if I took the appropriate measures to, figure out what the experience was, what thoughts I was having, just how to navigate, I wouldn't probably still be, having my experience with anxiety right now. But I share that because like people would see me, talk to me, interact with me, and not have a clue of what I've gone through or what my story is. And again, that's just a little piece. And it's important to highlight that the stigmas around mental health, and some of them being like persons with a mental health, like with a mental diagnosis or a mental illness, are unstable, they're not able to contribute to society, like all the things I'm not, essentially. But I want to say persons can have a mental illness because generalized anxiety disorder is considered a mental illness, and still be able to live fruitful lives. I think at this point, like, I'm really proud of myself, what I've been able to accomplish, and just how much I'm able to do. So from that experience and the observation that, there are such harmful stigmas, and just the way mental health is seen, not only in Jamaica, globally, I decided I want to use my voice to really highlight these stigmatized mental health and the word mental, and just educate persons about mental health more. Also provide support. So in 2019, I launched Think Mental Health JA, which is my nonprofit. And though we were launched in 2019, I was very enough and doing a lot of mental health work before. And what I've come to observe, from the talks I've had, because we've done talks in corporate spaces, in churches, in schools, really highlight some of the stigmas, which we can discuss a little later, and the importance of having these conversations right around the year, not just in May for Mental Health Awareness Month or on October 10th, but consistently having these conversations.
Yeah, I get you 100%. And I think too, we are concerned about, working from home with all our team members working from home. Like, how do you suggest that we, either listen out for triggers or listen out for, signs that someone may be struggling with something? I want to start with that. Like, what are things that as an external person, looking on to someone else, what do you think are some of the things we should be looking out for? And then, of course, I'd want to know, after we found out that, okay, something is going on, are there, recommendations as, steps persons can take to, kind of bring back that balance to their mental health?
Absolutely. So let's have that conversation then. So I'm going to speak from personal experience a lot because I must put the disclaimer out there. I'm not a mental health professional. I'm someone with experience, as well as I read widely about mental health, but take this information as just for educational purposes.
Right.
All right. So from my personal experience, I've been able to pinpoint when I'm having struggles with my mental health. This week, for example, I was very antsy. I probably was on the verge of a panic yesterday. And some of the signs that because I tried to be self-aware. So some of the signs I would have identified, the intrusive thoughts, just feeling overwhelmed. So now I've acknowledged that I really did take on a lot more than I can handle at this point. So I felt overwhelmed. The migraines, the difficulty sleeping, loss of interest in things that we typically enjoy. So I am very outgoing and I love talking to people. And I found myself kind of closing off since about Monday or so. Like, I just wanted to be by myself. I don't really want to talk to anybody.
Yeah.
And I use those as signs that, okay, Kim, check in with yourself. What's happening? What's causing you to feel like this? How can we move forward? So when we have our team members, these are things we can look out for. And we can ask the questions. Like, I make it a habit to check in with my team quite frequently. And that has allowed us to create a safe space where if they're not feeling too well, they reach out to me. And I've gotten called like, Kim, I'm feeling stressed. Like, I'm out of it. And it's for us as leaders, when we identify these signs, to help them to navigate as well.
Yeah. So how do you suggest that we help them to navigate it? Is it through conversation? Is it through, pointing them to resources? Is it through even just saying to them, hey, maybe you need to take a mental health day? Maybe you need to spend some time introspecting on the weekend, or do something completely out of your norm, which is something I like to recommend to my team members. Go to the beach, go on a hike, go find some friends and go do something that you're not doing on a daily basis, just to kind of break up the monotony. So what are some of the suggestions you would recommend that we try and incorporate in these conversations?
So you actually gave some very good recommendation. My first is always to seek professional mental health services. So through Think Mental Health JA, I've been able to connect persons with professionals. But just in the event that they either aren't ready, can't afford it at the moment, or just don't feel as if it's accessible at the moment, The last thing that you mentioned, taking a break, would be the second thing I recommend.
Okay.
Right? If it's even a couple hours out of the day, or an entire day, or take a few days.
Yeah.
If you need to take the break, take it, because it will not serve yourself or the team if you continue working under the same conditions and then burn out.
Yeah.
It's not worth it. Nothing is worth. I always tell myself there's nothing that's worth sacrificing my mental health. So I do encourage taking breaks. I try to get a feel of what they enjoy doing outside of work.
Yeah.
So I would suggest, okay, you like to play your ukulele. How about you go practice some ukulele this weekend? Okay, you like to paint. How about painting this weekend? And then Monday now, I probably ask a question like, so how was your weekend? What fun thing did you do? Right? Just to pick at them and see if they're really taking time. And we can look out for signs as well. For example, showing up to or stand up late, right? If this is consistent, check in to find out, hey, I realize that you coming to stand up late. This isn't normal for you. Is everything okay? Are you getting enough rest? Are you sleeping properly? Did you stay up until 5 a.m. to work? So you can ask the question. So you mentioned having the conversation. And these are things that I think we can really do. Something else I encourage is to connect, right? Especially in the time of the C word. It is very important for us to stay connected. And I'm happy too that we have our Scrum community of practice where we're able to connect, exchange ideas, and really vent if we need to, because we need that connection. We need it. So creating opportunities on the team to connect outside of the worky stuff. Allow us to let down our hair a little bit, even though I don't have much, but just something fun. And even outside of that, encouraging them to connect with family as well. So you can check in on them to see if they don't live with their family. Hey, when last did you speak to so and so? Especially if these are people they normally talk about. So just being aware, asking the right questions, and encouraging them to take the break, to get up in the day and stretch. Because one of the things I identified recently, I'm gonna roll my eye after them every time. Oh, I haven't stretched all day, because one of the questions I drop in the group sometime, in our WhatsApp group, or if we have a meeting, have you stretched yet? Have you had a glass of water?
Yeah, that's a Nikki thing. The water thing, it's a big thing for Nikki.
Yes, because it's very important that we, take care of our physical health as well. Everything connected, and as much as I promote mental health, for me, holistic health is a bigger thing.
Agreed.
So focus on every aspect from if you find yourself to be a spiritual person, make sure you're taking care of that part of yourself. Make sure, just focus on ensuring that there's a balance in the other aspects, because when one thing go off, shake up everything for you.
That's true. Nikki, any questions?
My question is around, so I wanted to take a step back, because I'm not certain if everyone understands how to identify that they're actually having like a mental health issue. I guess for me, it goes back to the whole stigma. Mental associated with just that mean you're out of your mind and you're crazy, but it doesn't mean that. You mentioned even simply being overwhelmed. Is there any way to identify what those triggers are?
All right, so I would have mentioned briefly some of the things to look out for. And you mentioned triggers as well. It's very important that we get to a place where we understand what our triggers are, and not in a way to avoid them, because we're not avoiding things around here. We're facing up to them, and using healthy ways to maneuver or overcome them, right? So understanding our triggers, understanding our emotions, and knowing that having emotions, it's okay, especially for the man them. Like the stigma has led us to a place where it's like men of experience emotions. So I'm a champion for men's mental health as well, because it's very important that we're able to, name our emotions and call them out. What's happening behind all of this? If you're feeling anxious, what is it telling me? If you're feeling sad, what is this emotion telling me? So paying attention to our triggers or emotions. So one of the signs of deteriorating mental health would be like prolonged sadness or irritability. And usually this is like a duration of 2 weeks or more. And we have to put things into context as well. Because if you just lost something or a loved one, you are going to feel sad for a good amount of time. But if there is no reasonable explanation and you're just feeling out of it for a long period of time, that's something you need to check into. Excessive worrying or fear is also something. Confused thinking or problems concentrating, our productivity is affected when our mental health is deteriorating. So we can check in on our productivity. How well are we doing compared to our normal? Each of us, I like to think that there is no real normal, but each of us have our own normal. So what is normal for us?
Yeah, we know what feels right for ourselves. So yeah.
Exactly. Right? There are, so if we're experiencing some physical ailments which we can't explain, those may be signs as well. This next one is very touchy, but if you're having suicidal thoughts, that's how we'll talk to itself. But be mindful of the thoughts that you're having, especially if they're unwelcome, intrusive, may cause danger. Check in, right? We mentioned loss of appetite, overindulgence. We're adults here, even overindulgence in sex is one of the signs. Are we using these things to cope? So sleeping too much, eating too much, drinking too much, abusing drugs, just being mindful, and just like an inability to carry out things which we're usually able to do in a day or able to handle, any struggles. And I like to say, well, not me, but mental health exists on a spectrum, right? From healthy to unwell. And all of it at some point in the spectrum, whether we are healthy, coping, struggling in a crisis, or have a mental illness, whatever the case is. But all of us are somewhere on the spectrum. And it's important for us to check in, be self-aware, understand what's happening with us.
Okay, and I'd want to take the conversation now to a place where we kind of talk about what kind of assistance or support could people look to get from Think Mental Health JA?
Okay, so what we do, we provide referrals to mental health professionals. We host events, virtual now, everything gone virtual. So we have virtual events, for example, support group sessions for persons who may be struggling or just need to connect with persons who they feel may understand them. And we have twice a month support group sessions. So can check out our page to see what's happening over there. For November, we are focusing on men. Again, I'm a champion for men's mental health because of all the harmful stigmas, like the hypermasculinity or toxic masculinity. So we will be celebrating men and highlighting men's mental health issues. So November is a great time for our men to tune in. But of course, we're doing work all year round. So just look out for the activities which are happening.
I'd want to also ask about the stigma. So, there is a stigma So what advice would you give to someone who may be thinking about getting professional help? Like, what advice would you give to that person to say, don't worry about the stigma, care about yourself? You know, what would be your advice?
That's literally it. Like, focus on self. These, like, the harmful stigmas are coming from way, way, way back, way back. I can't even pinpoint when, but they are here, and we can't allow them to prevent us from getting help. I must highlight, though, that the stigmas are one of the biggest barriers to getting help, right? Aside from accessibility issues, the stigmas play a big role in persons not reaching out for help. So I just want to encourage, if it is that you think you need nothing, all we can do with a check-in, even if nothing terrible not happening, let's not wait until there's a crisis situation. All of us can check in, but feel comfortable checking in, especially with professionals. The services are there for us. They're getting their training, their licenses and certifications to help us. So let's make use of the resources available to us. Let's not allow the harmful stigma that's out there to stop us. Because if needed, let me tell you a part of my story. Like, when I started therapy, I deliberately go back to my friends and say, hey, you know, I just finished a therapy session. I was so deliberate about it because I didn't want to start out in fear, because I knew of the stigma. So I started to open up about receiving therapy and the benefits as well. And that really helped me on my journey, because if I did follow the stigmas, I probably would be here struggling to this day. So let's not focus on the stigmas. If anything, let us try to dismantle the stigmas. So stigmas like there's no recovery if it is that you get a diagnosis, that persons with mental health issues or illnesses are unstable, are not able to do productive work, are not able to contribute to society, that men shouldn't cry. Look here, there are so many, but we are going to move forward regardless. And I encourage you to make best use of the resources available to you.
Yeah, and don't suffer in silence.
That one too.
Yeah.
Don't suffer in silence. Like, there's a beautiful thing about sharing our experiences. I always encourage persons to share, but share as much or as little as you want to, right? Because if you're not ready, that's fine too. But make sure you're not bottling up whatever you're experiencing, because that's where the damage is. When we literally can get physical, like, manifestations when we battle or bottle up our emotions, right? So let's find healthy avenues, we have to stress that part there, to get our emotions out and share what we're experiencing and connect and see how we can benefit from shared experiences as well.
I guess one of the points you made that has stuck with me as well, Kimon, has to do with just having that support around you. So if you find that you are trying to figure out yourself and you're trying to get help, and for whatever reason you may find that you have some toxic people around you, then you may need to evaluate, like, who is around you and just come to your circle. It may sound harsh, but at the end of the day, as you said, it's all about, you know what works for you. You know what makes you as an individual feel whole and feel happy. So do what you need to.
I was talking about being intentional about curating my life, essentially. And this is something I encourage persons to do. So from curating my space to the people around me, the things I choose to focus on, so my thoughts, curating the things I choose to do, curating even like my career path, you know, and not in a controlling sense, because again, that need to control is one of the not heavily talked about symptoms of anxiety, which I am also I've been working actively on, you know, just relinquishing control in a lot of areas, but curating what you can, right? Nicola mentioned the importance of your circle. And if there's toxicity there, it just means that you're going to have to do something about it, right? There are healthy ways to communicate, of course, so we want to make mention of that. But if it means removing somebody from your circle for your own well-being, absolutely. Again, it goes back to there's nothing in this life that's worth sacrificing my mental health for.
Sure.
That's been my mantra ever since. There's nothing, nobody who's worth or what's worth sacrificing my mental health for. So if you need to shape up your circle a little bit, do that. Do it. And make sure that you are not the problem. Because sometimes we are. So that will go back to understanding self, being aware of self, what our blind spots are, what we need to work on. Right. And our friends, family, therapists, professionals can help us to figure those out. Yeah. So just be open to growth.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Kimon. And if I'm being honest too, I'm realizing that the older I'm getting, the more I'm realizing that all of us could use some sort of time spent with a professional therapist to kind of unpack some of the things that we, as you have mentioned, either have repressed or things that we're ignoring or just the baggages we're carrying around from way back when. You know, it is, and I think it would help us to understand like how we react to certain things, or, you know, all those little things that we just say, oh, that's just me, or oh, that's just how I deal with stress. All those little things, you know, it's an opportunity for you to kind of learn more about yourself and learn how to better handle life. Because life not gonna stop coming at us, right? The most we can do is just try our best to either cope or handle it. And I think, you know, as you've mentioned, speaking with somebody who is professionally trained to handle our conversations or these type of conversations and give you the tools you need to go home now and be a productive member of your family, productive member of society.
Yes.
Can't hurt. It can't hurt. So
yes,
I'm with you 100%, girl.
Absolutely. And again, talk about my business a little bit. Like, one of the things I struggled with was, let me see, it's not one enough. I'm very rigid, right? When we talk about rigid, I'm on time. I appreciate when people are on time. I'm organized, rigid. I function best when there is structure. And I didn't realize that all of this linked back to something somewhere far in the past. It was my therapist, through probing and asking questions and just allowing me to talk, sometimes vent. She was able to say, okay, have you thought about perhaps this trait is linked to somebody crossing a boundary when you were a child? So over time, you have these rigid boundaries which you don't allow anybody or anything to penetrate. So you become rigid. And this is a trait where I not only me notice it, friends, family, partner, notice it. And as much as we like to say, oh, this is just how I am, me, I don't believe in that. So that's not even something I say, like, oh, this is how I'm made up, this is how I am. So mental health has to do with your emotional, social, and psychological well-being. All of us, every single one of we have a mental health, mental well-being, whatever you want to call it. All of us have it. Mental illnesses or mental health disorders or whatever we want to call it, is any mental health condition that affects the way an individual feels, thinks, or behaves. So feel, think, behave, right? From the intrusive thoughts to, for example, being very rigid, working on it, have been better, perfectionism, all of that. How we're able to relate to other people. Are we typically very sociable and have withdrawn? These are things that we look out for. And there are different categories of mental illnesses. And there are different characterizations or things they use to define or diagnose a mental illness. For example, dysfunction, danger, deviation, you have the duration, and they have distress. These are more on the technical side, but it's important for us to understand. So all of us have a mental health. Not everybody have a mental illness, but that doesn't mean that we don't struggle with our mental health. So at some point during our lives, we will experience something that affects us mentally. Even the traffic, like we live in Jamaica. Well, one of the benefits of working remotely is not having to contend with the traffic. But even the traffic, so we think about like environmental factors that can affect our mental health. So the whole of we in this, I know COVID, I love talk about it sometimes, but it's our new reality.
Yeah.
And it is affecting our mental health.
It is. It is. Especially persons who are social
So
butterflies.
right now is where more persons are opening up to, and huggers
Hey.
like myself, struggling.
Yeah.
But like COVID has given light to just how important our mental health is. And I think that's one of the good things that have like come out of this whole thing that's happening. You know, persons are more, or at least trying to be more in tune with themselves. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So final words.
Final words. Self-compassion, make sure you get rest, eat healthy, exercise. You know, I can look at yoga, look at walking, nothing too tough. Stay connected. Let me see if there's anything else. Hobbies, like do something fun, recreation. If you want to go hike the Blue Mountain, sure. If you like to paint, do it. If you love plants, get some plants. Just do it. And just invite a little joy and a little fun in your life. Like that's how we're going to get out of this anyways.
Yeah, completely agreed. Thank you so much for joining us today, Kimon. We look forward to having more conversations with you.
Yes. I was just going to ask Kimon, remind us of your social media handles again, please, so we can also invite persons to start following you, getting tips on how it is that we do for mental health.
Yes, so on social media, you can just search Think Mental Health JA, but on Twitter and Instagram, it's ThinkMH_JA. Yes.
Thank you so much for being with us today, Kimon.
My pleasure.
Great.